Welcome to the Kayacast, the podcast for cannabis businesses looking to launch, grow, and scale their operations.
So, Scott, when should somebody think about delivery?
Yeah, so I think someone should think about delivery after they have their tech stack correct, like right after they open, they have their operations down, their bud tenders trained, they're driving revenue, they build a solid customer base, they start their loyalty program, they're starting to retain customers and give them a little something extra so they don't shop with a competitor. And, ultimately they're buttoned up and they're in month 5 to 6 where things are ironed out and they're able to take on more and start to look at other revenue streams and what we can do. Dispensaries looking at what they can do to retain customers, drive more lifetime value, and lower their customer acquisition cost. I think is a perfect time. And you can look at that from a revenue standpoint, right? You can look at it from a revenue standpoint where you can put a revenue mark on it where you generally know if you're doing about $1 million worth of business a month, you can generally, with minimal marketing, drive about 10 to 15 delivery orders a day, 80% being returning customers that have bought at least once at the store, and then around 20% new customers, our data shows, and with higher higher average order values of around $150 to $160 instead of, $95 in store. So you're making more money on the same ticket. So I think that it really goes back to that piece, what you're doing in store, how much revenue you're currently driving, and what's your ultimate goal as a business, right? We talked about this a little bit in our pre-podcast, but what's your ultimate goal? What are you trying to do? Because there's so many different avenues that these retailers can take, come out with their own products, do manufacturing, start cultivation, to get vertically integrated, to squeeze more margin and better unit economics out of their products, right? So there's so many routes these people can go. And with funding being tough in the cannabis space right now and money being limited, what are you going to tackle, right? And I think that all comes back to what's your end goal. Or is your goal just to build a couple stores and sell it? Where, someone like me, I'm more interested in the future of retail, and I use cannabis as just an entry point for that point of like, how can I create the best user experience possible? How can we create the shopping of tomorrow? And so, from my perspective, that's my end goal, and I'm working backwards, right? And I think the retailers need to do the same thing with what they're trying to accomplish.
Got it. That's interesting. It's so true. If I was a retailer and I'm just starting my business today, and I'm only 2 months in, and I'm still trying to figure out the retail operations, adding on a delivery service will dilute resources. You kind of have to get things straight first, is what you're saying from an operations perspective.
Yeah, because any issues that you haven't solved will get magnified for sure.
Mm-hmm. What are some of those issues that you've seen?
Yeah, like customer service issues, right? You're looking at tech stack when it comes to putting orders through, managing your inventory, the inventory flow, your AR and AP. You're looking at, and it's funny, Kayapush, there you go, your AR AP. And then you're looking at, a big major thing that will get messed up is your reconciliation. If you don't have that piece down, the way you reconcile on your orders on the POS and your e-com, and then on your payment processor, that whole thing could get really ripped up and become pretty tricky. And all these cannabis tech companies have their own quirks. They all have different issues, and everything's so new. So that's one thing. And also the compliance aspect of it, the tracking for metric or BioTrack is another issue, making sure the compliance is straight. That's all that stuff is not in line, then delivery maybe is not the first thing you should think about.
So once an operator has those things lined up, controls are good, there's baseline numbers, from your experience, what can they expect from delivery? What is that jump in sales on average?
Yeah, I think that if you're doing pretty well, I think 50 to 100 grand, if you're doing $1 million a month, I think is realistic.
So a 10% increase, really?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're doing $100K a month, you'll do another 10 to 15,000.
I think
roughly?
so. I think so. And whether that comes from people that would shop at a competitor now shopping at you because you provide a great delivery service, or they're transferring from the black market or homegrown, or they're new customers in general, and they're new cannabis consumers because they don't like the stigma and they don't want to go to the store and be seen in the store. So I think, that just nailing that down would require a lot more in-depth analysis. But yeah, I think you can judge a 10%, increase is fair to say. And I think there's a lot more potential if you really do it. You create a user experience that's in parallel, like with a DoorDash and Amazon and Uber Eats. I think that if you can turn orders quickly, and I think you can even expect more than that.
Do you see an increase in average order size from delivery versus in-store?
Yeah, way more, like 50 to 100% more.
Wow.
Yeah. People are buying
That
more on
much
the same
more.
ticket. And I don't, yeah, I mean, people are buying more on the same ticket, and whether that equates to people buying more at one time and shopping less overall, or buying more and just smoking more altogether and spending more altogether as a total in an aggregate over, like, say you look over the course of a year, it's tough to say because we don't have access to that data when it comes to retailers in store in comparison, and what those customers do before they do delivery. We don't have access to that data, so it's tough to say. But the retailers would have more insight on that when you look at
I
trend.
wonder if it's splitting orders. I wonder if you have a few friends over. You're like, hey, I'm going to order some cannabis. You want to hop on? It's kind of like
Yeah,
ordering food.
yeah.
I
People,
wonder how
yeah,
much of that is that.
yeah. I mean, or you just perceive. I think a lot of it has to do with the perceived value of delivery. Like, you're getting an extra service, so okay, I'm going to spend a little bit more. And then some of the different dispensaries, we set a minimum where they get free delivery over a certain value. So people are spending like, oh, I'm going to add one more thing in my cart so I can get the free delivery.
Hmm.
So that's another thing that helps too, another trick. But yeah, I think it's a combination of a bunch of different things.
What is the economics of starting a delivery service? So let's say I'm a retailer. I do 100K a month. I'm going to expect top end maybe 15K more. I'll net 75, right? Low end, maybe I'll net 5. How much does it cost to actually start a delivery service so that, somebody can really work through the math on, okay, what is the risk reward here?
Yeah, so I think you got to look at a couple different things. You got to look at the price of the vehicles depending on the state. So the price of labor, you have to pay people even when you're not really making deliveries. You have to compensate people, because if you don't, they'll go, you'll have a high turnover and they'll go do something else, and you'll never get your feet out under you. And then I think you got to look at the technology. There's some out of the box solutions that are out there. They're not great, but if, depending on what your tech stack already is, you might have to do some custom dev work. On top of that, there's insurance that can run up about $10,000 a year or more. You look at, so the technology, the insurance, of course, the marketing. So there's a couple different factors in that piece. Maintenance of
Let's say we're
vehicles.
talking about New Jersey and then New York, two states that you operate in. If I wanted to start my own delivery service, what would you say the startup cost would be?
I think you can budget for around 30, 40 grand.
30, 40 grand. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So 30, $40,000. So let's say it's $40,000 to make things simple. And if you net $4,000 a month, your payback period is 10 months, but that includes also the upfront risk involved. So that's really the math that somebody really needs to consider is, okay, well, it may take you close to a year before you break even if you're starting your delivery service, if you do.
Yeah, it might take a year, and it might not be great. It might go downhill. You might not do a good job. There's a bunch of different factors, right? So there's no guarantee.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's risk and reward, right?
Yeah.
So what is why should somebody consider a third party provider for the delivery?
Well, I think you get the benefit with less. You still get some upside, not as much as if you did it on your own, but without as much downside, right? So it's a more plug and play solution, and you have someone like a Priscotty who can come in and understands the business and has been doing this for years and have seen what works and what doesn't work, adjusted their operations, their technology, and their product based on that. So you're getting the experience, which ultimately could take a long time to learn, and then could make your program fail before it even starts, right? So you're setting yourself up for more success, and I think you still get the upside long term, and you still get the offer, you still get that retention from the customers, offer them that service. You know, we have a white label solution. We call it, it's almost like a DaaS, like a delivery as a service, I call it. It's their customer base, their platform, our operations, our SOPs, our wherewithal, our technology on the back end for the delivery infrastructure. You know, so you get everything you need. It's a plug and play solution to, you know, retain customers. And then, you know, you also get a lead gen solution in the Priscotty virtual retailer that's going to help drive more sales that you might have not otherwise had.
What's the typical cost per transaction on those two?
For our services, we charge around 20% for the marketplace, for our lead gen marketplace, and then around 15% for the white label.
What's the minimum order you guys have?
70,000.
Oh, sorry,
No,
$70.
$70, yeah.
Okay, so I'm just working through the math. So if call it $100 order, you net 50, 15 goes to delivery, so 35. So your margins are 35. But then again, 35, your labor cost in store is roughly 20%. So if you don't have to pay labor costs, so your delivery service really covers the labor costs. So you're running on economies of scale, really.
Yes. So we're able to, we're not just with the labor cost, but with the technology costs as well. And then the operations, the cost to run that. Yeah, absolutely. So we're able to spread that out across multiple different.
So what if somebody asks you this, okay? Customer service. I am a stickler for customer service. That's why we never export our customer service or any. We want to control to make sure that we have control over providing exceptional customer experiences. When somebody relies on a third party, they kind of give away that control. So how does customer experience work? What are you looking for? And what happens when an order is, say, delivered late or maybe wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's multiple different pieces in the flow of delivery, right? From the point of the order being placed to the point of the order being delivered. And if, you know, the same party is not in control of that whole flow, you're out of the loop, right? So you're getting someone, if you're not managing the whole flow, you just don't have the best insight into what's going on through the whole process, right? Mm-hmm. So I ultimately agree with you. User experience is everything. And I think it's a bad move to outsource customer service in a whole. Like you said, you lose control and you don't have insight into the operation. And to split that up, like we have some dispensaries that want to come in and, you know, handle more than we want them to. And we're just like, look, this is our solution. Take it or leave it. You know, we know it works best, and we've done this for a long time. And, you know, we know that giving up that piece will create issues for the operation, and ultimately our business will suffer and people won't get delivery. And because we charge on a percentage base, you know, we'll make less money. So we're not willing to make that agreement. So ultimately customer service is everything. And it takes someone to understand the whole flow, how the technology's intertwined. You're dealing with an e-com, a POS, a state tracking system. You're dealing with bud tenders. You're dealing with fulfillment people. You're dealing with drivers. You're dealing with customers. You know, there's like between the technology and then the people, there's like 8 or 9 different parties involved in the transaction. It's a lot of moving parts.
So where do customers call if their order is late, and who do they talk to, and how does that information go back to the dispensary owner?
So it depends on what platform. For us, it depends on what platform they're placed. But if the order is placed on the dispensary's website, we come in and we train the staff on how to handle that, and they take care of that issue. The staff there'd be a point person in each location, but they would handle that.
Got it. So somebody what is that word that dispatch? Not a dispatch person. Obviously, you know, you have your own dispatch, but somebody that understands where the driver is, can communicate with your team, and can be the liaison between the customer and you guys.
Yeah, and we're actually about to launch like want like a better interactive business dashboard and portal where dispensary staff can see where the drivers are at all times. So location tracking. So having the
Got it.
visibility into the operation, they still have that. They still have that transparency, even though it's you can say it's outsourced. So yeah, it understanding the flow, and there's so much going on. You really need to have the people that understand have been involved from start to finish.
Got it. You know, that's interesting to me. It all really depends, in my opinion, on the volume. And when you're first starting off, you don't understand the volume. There's an upfront cost, and the service that you guys provide is 15%. So 15% in a dispensary, that goes to labor. If you're operating a very, very well-run dispensary, your labor cost will be 15% of sales. That's a very optimally ran operation for retail. Now, delivery may be different, but if I was to compare delivery in terms of labor costs compared to, say, for example, in store, and if it's consistent, then there may be something there. Obviously, you know, you can have a driver work in the dispensary. That's probably not optimal. That driver needs
No.
to be a driver. Like, what are you doing in the back? If you're not,
Yeah.
you need a full-time guy driving, right? So then that then breaks down to how much are you paying a driver? Probably say all in $30 or $25 or whatever the case may be with insurance. And then you just work up the math from there, right? How many orders I'm getting? What is the size of the order? What am I paying this person from a daily perspective? And then what am I making off delivery from a daily perspective? And does that go above over or under 15? If it's over 15 or close to $15, then you got to factor in your other overhead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to keep it cheap, like you said. You made an important point. The economies of scale. So in the future, like my goal is to make that as cheap as possible, and lower our costs to make that as cheap as possible. So for our dispensary partners, we look at it almost like a courier fee, right? Like a FedEx fee. It's a flat fee when you go to the FedEx, right? So we're trying to get it there. And as we understand more about data, market trends, and see things and where things go and how cannabis levels out, I mean, we'll be able to make those adjustments and make it more affordable for our customers, aka dispensary partners. It's only going to come down from there. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think you're right. I mean, when you look at it like that, you know, that 15% you're giving to us is essentially that's what it would cost you in labor, let alone, you know, let alone everything else involved in the transaction.
Yeah, that's it at the end of the day, it becomes a numbers game. And I do agree with it really depends on the operator, guys. If you're listening and you're thinking about delivery and you're really you feel as though that there's a lot more to give and a lot more attention to give on the retail experience, then it may be a good partner to partner up with a solid delivery provider that can round out your services so you can focus on, you know, your attention to where you need to in the business.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it really all comes down to what's your end goal. What's your end goal? What are you trying
Yeah.
to accomplish, right? Because that money could be used to go put down a down payment for a new location and get a loan and go buy a distressed asset, a distressed dispensary. So I think it really depends on what your ultimate goal is, and it's not just about the numbers and how many deliveries am I going to do, and is the mathematical does the mathematics make sense? But you know, what's my end goal as an entrepreneur or a business owner?
So
Where
if
do I
if a
see?
business owner was offering delivery through their own platform, so they're in control of their e-commerce, for example, right? It's
Yeah,
not you probably offer both. You probably offer dispensary owners, hey, off your platform or off our platform. Why wouldn't they, right? Why wouldn't they go on your platform? That's really a free lead gen,
yeah.
right? You're only charging 5% more for that. But you would still control your e-commerce side, which is important for a lot of people.
Yeah, they want to build their brand too, right? They want to build their brand too, which I say, yeah, that's great. You should do that. You should be building your brand, right? But again, I think I come from the e-commerce space before I was involved with Priscotty. I've done e-com for a while now, and I think that driving e-commerce sales, it's a different style of selling in business than a brick and mortar. So I think that, and that leads to a whole nother problem. I think that the cannabis industry is facing when it comes to just like how things have played out when it comes to the different e-commerce companies, just these shitty iframes and people just throwing them up and thinking it's going to get sales. And then that's not the case. Running a DTC business and marketing in that fashion and the user experience that you have to give through that to retain customers is completely different than in store. So it's really like two separate businesses. And if you don't understand that, a lot of these dispensary owners too are starting a business from the first time, and they're trying to wrap their head around their in-store retail, starting delivery, maybe even if it doesn't make financial sense on paper, maybe it's not starting delivery using someone else, even if it doesn't make financial sense on paper, maybe it's not the most optimal thing to go do it yourself.
Yeah. I've always thought about this idea, and this is probably not the best idea because it takes a lot of resources. And I do think that as a dispensary owner, you do have to really, really be hardcore on the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, and just really, really focus on the activities that generate 80% of your revenue, your income. But I feel like there's a market that's lost in our industry. And I talk about this a lot with other people, where everybody knows about the recreational industry, the rec market. Everybody knows about the medical market. We are all fighting for the same users, really.
Yeah.
But not a lot of owners, shops, and brands really focus on the health and wellness industry. And the health and wellness industry represents $70 billion, which is a lot more than the rec market today. So we're not talking about vitamins, but we're talking about gut health, right? CBG. We're talking about sleep, CBN. We're talking about focus and energy, TCV, inflammation. Everybody knows about that, CBD. What are your thoughts on having an e-commerce brand? And, regulation aside, you set up an e-commerce brand that's just health focused and you target those users online.
I think there's there's definitely an avenue for it. I was involved more on the minor cannabinoid hemp derived side before I got involved in the recreational adult use cannabis. So it's kind of like my world. I always thought there was a market for it. I think that, and I think as more research comes out with cannabinoids as a whole, I think people are seeing that the benefits and how they can be used more on an isolation basis if you isolate them. And I think that's where the market is ultimately going, like issue targeted products, right? But I think right now they get lost. It gets lost in the whole getting high thing, right? Like I want to get high. So I think there's going to be a couple things that needed for that to happen. I think there's going to need to be product. I think there's going to need to be what's the right term I'm looking for? Innovation in product. And I think the consumer buying habits too, when you boil it down, like why am I really consuming cannabis? Is it to get high, or am I taking care of another issue, and can another product be better for this that's more targeted towards that because someone makes one now? Yeah. So I think there's always been a play for that. I've always liked that play, almost like I'm calling almost like a virtual it's
a ghost
telemed.
If you look at
ghost kitchen, but telemed, like almost like towards people, like more incorporating the whole person, their wellness. So I think there definitely is an aspect for that.
Yeah, I wonder if regulations aside, guys, in the restaurant industry, you have ghost kitchens, right? A company can set up a ghost kitchen and they can set up 5 different brands, load it up onto Uber Eats, and now you're eating Mexican food, you're eating X food, you're eating whatever food, right? And it's all come from the same kitchen.
Yeah.
So they have the economies of scale and they're leveraging a platform like Uber Eats, which, we don't have in the cannabis industry. And Scott, I know that you're working towards that, right? Where they can then have distribution. There's not a lot of marketing to a consumer like me, entrepreneur, young family. I care about productivity. I'm not a recreational user, but, I take mushroom supplements. I take a slew of supplements to increase my energy and increase my focus. And I know that the cannabinoids that we're starting to see can really help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there just needs to be more research done and come out. And I think the federal regulation will allow for that too. That's been obviously a big hurdle. And I know it affects a lot of things, but in the space. But yeah, I think that will more research and development will allow for that innovation. But I agree. I think there's a big market for that piece. I think that's where things are going. I think there's a couple brands doing it really well right now, I think, and have started doing it well. And I'd like to see where things go and progress.
Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. You shed a lot of knowledge on deliveries, when somebody should think about deliveries. I agree with you. I think if you're first starting out, you probably want to get things settled first. And when you're assessing deliveries, it becomes an economics game, and it's definitely a lot cheaper to explore a third-party provider that has a good reputation.
Yeah. So yeah, ultimately, to sum it up, I think get your operation correct. If you're a dispensary listening to this, get your operation correct. Get your bud tenders trained. Make customers happy. Drive revenue. Build up a customer base. And then start to look at ways you can monetize. And then once you look at, start to look at other ways you can monetize, think about your end goal. What's my end goal? Like where am I going with this? Is my goal to build 2 to 3 dispensaries and sell it? Or, what am I trying to accomplish? And I think that if you do that, you'll end up in the right space.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, we got to have you back on. You got to share with us the states that where are you live, by the way?
New York.
New York? Are you live in New Jersey too, right?
Oh, sorry. No, I thought you meant where am I right now? Yeah, we're live in Jersey.
Jersey?
Yeah.
But do you deliver in New York too, or just Jersey?
Not yet. We're not yet Jersey. I mean, not New York yet. We're focusing on Jersey right now. But New York should be coming maybe in the next 30 days. So we're working on some cool stuff. So, next time I'll be on, I'll have an update on that. But yeah, I think that's
awesome.
pretty soon.
It's
in the works.
Where can our listeners find you?
Add me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Scott_Prisco. And then, add me on LinkedIn. You can check out Priscotty, HQ, Twitter, Instagram. We post some great content. So yeah, any of those would work, and just shoot us a message if you want to chat, and, we can go from there. Or you can go on Priscotty.com for sure too. That's obviously, the website's obviously a good starting point.
Awesome, Scott. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I know what you're thinking. Did any of my bud tenders win this week? Let's find out. This week's Bud Tender Spotlight goes to Howard Thompson III, who was nominated for being a hardworking person, always in a good mood, and constantly looking for projects to improve the business. Great job, Howard. If you'd like to nominate a bud tender, please check out Kayapush's Bud Tender Spotlight campaign. I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to the Kayacast podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcast app, or visit our website to access the full archive of episodes from the show.